Alright, so 1/8 of an inch is a very small increment, right? But to be honest with you, still not small enough. So we need to take eighths and we need to break them into smaller equal pieces. And if we follow our little rule about dividing fractions in half, we'll just get rid of that division sign and we'll multiply. And 8 times 2 is 16. We're just doubling the bottom number each time, right? Okay, so 1/16. We can take each eighth and break it up into 2 equal spaces of a 16th each. So let's take our big inch, let's fold it back to halves, back to quarters, back to eighths, and we're going to do one last fold. And fortunately, this is our last fold, because it got a little tough. And we'll put crease in, and then we will open it up. And we should see some new creases. So this time, let's put in a short line. Let's make it the shortest of all the lines we've made so far. Alright, so 1/16 is our first increment. 1/8 is really 2/16, right? And then we have 3/16. 1/4 would be 4/16, which makes this 5/16. 3/8 is 6/16, reduced down, right? That makes this 7/16. 1/2. 1/2 is actually 8/16. 9/16. 10/16. 11/16. 3/4 becomes 12/16. 13/16. 7/8 would be 14/16. And last but not least, we have 15/16. And then at the end, 1 inch, well, that is 16/16. So now please don't ever say or write down or record these numbers in parentheses, because every one of them can be reduced. But I like to show them because it helps us to see the pattern, right? That every space is a 16th, just some of them are reduced down. Look at the pattern of odd numbers again, right? Do you see it? 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. Okay, and then finding the 16ths on your scale is really not that challenging. They are the smallest increments. So let's take a closer look at them. Every small space is now 1/16. 1/16, 3/16, 5/16, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. If I were to take my marker here and move it down a little ways, can you identify what it's pointing to right now? Right, so there's a couple of things we can do. We can look to see what we're close to. Like maybe you recognize that that is 1.5, but it's a 16th less than 1.5. You can count spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's 1 and 7/16. Or maybe you look at 1.5 and you know that a half is 8/16. So the 16th before that would be 7/16. Either way you do it, it's all good. I'm not going to criticize you. But the more we measure, the more comfortable and the more familiar we'll get with using measurements. Let's move it down a little bit more, why don't we? Can you identify that location right there that we're pointing at? Right, so we're looking at 2, 2 is the nearest whole number, and then 1, 2, 3 spaces, 2 and 3/16. The more time you spend reading measurements, the better you will get at interpreting the measurements and understanding where they are and what the readings are. Now, there might just be some reason, though, that this is going to be difficult for you. Looking at how long the lines are and looking at the amount of space, getting oriented so you can find halves and quarters and eighths. So there's one last thing that you can do. If we're going through this, we're doing our best, but we're still having a heck of a time. I really don't recommend it, but you know, in a pinch, it works. And it's called just count the 16ths. For example, if I started at the 0 and I was measuring to this line here, and just by looking at it, you couldn't tell that that was a 1/4 of an inch, well, what could you do? Well, you could count the spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. And now 4 spaces is 4/16. And of course that reduces to 2/8, and that reduces to 1/4. You see, without really looking at how long the lines are, or any of that stuff that we just talked about, you could limp along if you had to for at least a little while by counting spaces and then reducing. How about this one here? Now maybe you're looking at that and saying, I know what that is. You're counting by eighths, or maybe you're looking at 3/4 and saying it's an eighth less than 3/4. But again, if you can't do that, you can always count spaces. 1 space, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10/16. Can you reduce 10/16? Well, sure you can, because the top number is 10. It's an even number, it will cut in half. Right, so 10/16 reduces in half to 5/8. So, if all else fails, and you're not sure what the small divisions between the whole numbers are measuring out to, our goal is to be able to look at the lines and how long the lines are, and be able to read the measurements off the lines that are on the measuring tool. But if we had to, if we were in a pinch, you could always count spaces, see if you can reduce, and then come up with your fraction.